Welcome to our first episode of ManaTutor MTG Draft. Some of you may know the main channel, ManaTutor MTG, where we go over collecting and investing, but this channel is where the other passion comes on out, drafting MTG. And we decided to make a different channel for this topic, not only for the separate topic, but I also have my partner in crime, Matt, with me. Matt's been one of my closest friends for the past 25 years, and he's also a great Magic player. And Matt, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about your history with Magic, how you got started, and
Sure.
what you've been playing?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I've been playing Magic not quite as long as Jeremy, but probably for about, say, 21, 22 odd years. Started around the Mercadian Masks block, Invasion, mostly doing Friday Night Magic, casual collecting, that kind of stuff. Played it off and on here and there throughout, the intervening years. Now I'm pretty much almost exclusively into Commander, but as this channel is about drafts, well, we'll see how well I can rate draft cards. Probably not as well as Jeremy, but
I've had a few sets.
I'll get better.
Yeah, I've had a few sets more of experience on that, but I also started really getting serious into it about 3 years ago was when I really started grading drafts and stuff like that. So it takes a little bit of time, but I having talked with Matt about some of the spoilers, I'm not worried at all about it.
Well, undoubtedly there's going to be something that I'm just going to be way off base, and you'll tell me why.
Well, undoubtedly there's going to be something I'm going to be way off base once we actually start playing.
Sure.
But
yeah.
It's worth the great thing about these set reviews is getting familiar with the cards and having that advantage when you're looking at a pack rather than reading through them all and having an idea of what's roughly good, what's roughly bad, and then using 17 lands of the data to review that and updating as we go.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so with that, let's dive into this first episode. In this episode, we're going to be covering uncommons and commons of the lands, artifacts, and multicolored. That's a great way to first understand really what the archetypes are trying to do in the set. And then we'll be going through Wooburg in separate episodes, all the different colors. And we will also go over a episode of all the rares at one point as well. And before we do that, though, let's get our grading scale or get that out there so people know how we're grading these. We are grading these A's through F's. I'll start at the bottom. F's are your unplayable cards. You don't ever see an opportunity to play this card. They're typically made for constructed, and they're just bad and limited. So that's that. D is for filler. So cards you will fill in a deck. You're almost always going to play some D's, D pluses in your deck, but they're not your strong cards. C's are your standard playables, just fine cards. B's are where you're really starting to get into the power. They are cards that pull you into a particular color. So a lot of times you'll have the argument between a C+, a good playable, and a B-, a card that just pulls you into that particular color. So that's B's, and then A's are your bombs, your great cards where it doesn't really matter that much if you're an A- or A+, but we will sometimes maybe argue a little bit that's the weaker side of bombs versus just a blow-away bomb.
Yeah.
So that's our scale, and with that, let's get started. Up first, we have the Great Hall of the Citadel. It's a land, tap it for a colorless mana, or pay 1 and tap it to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast legendary spells. So this is great that it doesn't come into play tapped, right? It's kind of like Evolving Wilds in that case, but it can fix for any colors that you need, but the legendary piece does set it back. It's still a nice pickup to splash legendaries. I like this card a good amount. I don't think it's an extremely high pick, but I would give this about a C-. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so I actually kind of gave this 2 grades. My grades are more of, if you're playing 1 or 2 colors, I think this is a D. If you're playing a 3-color or splashing a 3-color, I think it's definitely a C to maybe even C+, depending on the situation, because it really does help fix your mana if you're in a situation that's bad. But other than that, yeah, I can see picking it up. But I think most times I would probably pass it over for something else. So yeah, I think C- is probably the average of where I'm at too, if you average both.
Okay, sounds good. I've got us both down for C-. Moving on to our next card.
Yep. So Shire Terrace, it taps for colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. So this is basically a version of Evolving Wilds in a lot of ways, but it also has the option to tap for colorless. So I rated this like basically D plus C minus range, but I also, again, in a 3-color deck, I would probably bump this up a couple of notches because it is, again, very good for fetching that, 1 or 2 lands of something if you're splashing for a color or whatever. It just adds a little bit of additional versatility to your game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what I wonder is, what do you think about this versus the Evolving Wilds type of card where it comes into play, you tap it, sacrifice it, search for a land in your deck, put that into play. Do you like this better, worse? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways it's worse, right? Because you have to pay 1 into it to use it, right? But it also has the option to tap for colorless. So I think it's very situational, right? And so that's why I think I'd probably rate, if I had to side with this, it'd probably be a D plus. But again, I think it's much more useful if you're, considering 3 colors at all, or even, primarily 1 color, just flashing a second or something like that, then this becomes much more useful.
Yeah, completely agree. I had this as a C, but I also I graded that before reviewing the rest of the set. This is the second card I graded, right? And it does seem like the set is going to be a 2-color set for the most part in it.
Yeah.
So with that, and your point of like having multiple grades, I shifted towards the assuming like we're gonna get into more colors type of thing. And as I reviewed the set, I think that's less the case. So I probably won't come down to like the D level or anything, but I do think this is probably another C minus in my mind. So yeah, that's what I have. Up next, we have the Grey Havens. It's a legendary land. When the Grey Havens enters the battlefield, scry 1. You can tap to add a colorless, and you can tap to add 1 mana of any color among legendary creature cards in your graveyard. So I do like scry 1 lands. This is tough to be your fixing, though, if you're trying to fix for things, because you have to have that splash color in your graveyard before it'll pull off that. So the floor is high, though. It's a land that scries 1, so that's nice, but it's not that high of a pick. I like this less than the other lands that we had, but I don't hate it. So in my mind, this is about a D+. Wondering what you think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I have it as well. I have it as a D+, but I also have as a synergy in scry decks. If we'll get into this later on in the set, but they're, blue and green have a lot of scry in them, and if you end up building a deck that has a lot of scry in it, and affects the trigger on scry, I could totally see this jumping up to like a, C+, right, even B- level of like, yeah, I'm going to take that because it's just going to help everything else in my deck.
Yeah, I think you never cut this in a scry deck.
Exactly.
It'll
you
always
take
be
it.
land there.
Just take it.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, D plus overall, it would be my grade as well.
All right, great. Let's move on to the artifacts since there's no more lands left.
Sweet. Next up, we have the artifacts, common and uncommon. And we're going to start off with the lowest mana cost, and that would be Wizard's Rockets. It costs 1 colorless. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can pay X and tap it, sacrifice Wizard's Rockets, add X mana in any combination of colors, and then when it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So for me, I think this is pretty middling. Like I like it again. It's a good fix, similar to kind of we just discussed with the lands. But it certainly loses that power in a 1 or 2 colored deck. So I think I just went overall with a C here. It's good, it's decent. I'd probably take it in some cases, but it's not going to get to the C+ category. I'm actually almost talking myself down to a C- here, but I'll leave it at C.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went through the same evolution that you just did when I graded this. It's a good fixer, but it costs a spell slot, whereas the lands do not. And it's a one-time use. I mean, it replaces itself, which is nice, which makes it viable. And it's not overly expensive, but I think it is inconvenienced enough for the fixing that I have as a D plus.
Okay.
D pluses, I'll put those in my deck. If I need to fix, this is going in. But it's not that high of a pick for me. D plus.
Sure.
Up next, we have Lambas. I think that's how you pronounce it. When
Lambas, yeah.
Lambas, yeah. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1, then draw a card. Pay 2 and sacrifice Lambas. You gain 3 life. When Lambas is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, its owner shuffles it into their library. I think this is too mana intensive to get a food. It does have the scry 1 draw a card synergy with it, which is 2 of the archetypes that we talked about, and I graded this before judging that. But I still think you want more effective ways to trigger those synergies. I have this as in the D range. I actually gave this one a D minus, which I don't do very often. But yeah, I think this is too mana intensive, and there are better playables to fit in for your synergies. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. No. I have it as a C minus. I kind of like it, but I agree with you. It is a little expensive, right? 2 mana to play it, 2 mana to activate it. I do like the scry 1, then draw a card. Just I tend to like cards that say scry 1, then draw, because you get to choose, right? Like if you need a land and you're scrying a land, great, congratulations, you now have that land. You can play it, etc. So I'm always a fan of like scry and then immediately draw overall. I like that it recurs. So, not that you're likely to come across it multiple times, but you could, right? It's one of those things where it not only replaces itself because you draw the card on play, but when it dies, it goes back in your deck. So I rated it as a C minus. I still, like you, I probably wouldn't prioritize this card, but I wouldn't be mad at all to see it, and I'd probably take it over some other commons, depending on the situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see myself coming up to like a synergy C minus or D plus type of thing if you're getting into one of the draw card or scry decks. But yeah, I think you can put me down as a D for now on this one. All right, moving on to our next card, we have Shire Scarecrow. It's a 2 mana 0/3 artifact creature Scarecrow. It has Defender. It has pay 1 mana, add 1 mana of any color, activate only once each turn. I'm not a fan of creatures with 0 power. Like, yes, they defend, but they don't defend and possibly help kill something. So I don't like that to begin with. It's nice to have board presence and a fixer, so it can defend and fix you. I'll play it if I ran low on fixing, but that's the only time I would play it. And I wouldn't be surprised if I play this card maybe like once in the whole set or something. So I have it at a D.
Yeah, I have it as a D plus. So I gave it a little bit just of a higher grade. I like the fixing. I don't mind Defender as much. I agree with you. Killing things is better. That's the whole point. It's not going to kill your opponent. But I do like, it's a decent 2-drop in a set that, I actually kind of went back after I looked at some of the other cards and revised it up from a D, just because I didn't see a lot of great 2-drops depending on the color. Some colors have more, other colors don't. And so I look at it as it's a decent 2-drop that'll be able to block potentially, a ring bear, right? Because the whole idea, and we haven't really got into the mechanics of the set, right? But the ring bear can only be blocked by something with power less than or equal to it, typically. So power 0, hey, this can block a ring bear. That's great, right? So that's the other reason I kind of like revised it up, is I think it's decent for that kind of purpose. But yeah, D plus D.
Yeah, you talked me up on it. The ring bearer aspect is interesting and how it interacts with that. I'll come up to a D plus. But yeah, it's a close call on that one. Like I think there are better D pluses out there. This would be at the lower end of my list there.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So the last common artifact we have is Inherited Envelope. It costs 3, and when it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. And so we really haven't described the mechanics of the set yet, but that's a mechanic that can alter the game. It gives you an emblem. It progresses throughout the game, kind of like venturing into a dungeon does. And then you can also tap this to add 1 mana of any color. So I rated this as a D+. It's an expensive artifact, right? But I can see it with the ring tempting you. It is a useful mechanic. You're usually going to want to max that mechanic out. It's got 4 different levels throughout the game, so I can certainly see it being useful in that case. The tap for any color is kind of a nice bonus to it that allows you to kind of fix your mana a little later on. So overall, I think I went with a D+.
Okay, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I just have it as a D. These type of cards are, it's a little bit of ramp. The Ring Tempts You is interesting addition to a card like this, so I like it better than most cards like this. But I tend to like my fixing to be one of the cheaper options that we had on the list, so I have it at D.
Sure. One of the major mechanics in this set is the Ring Tempting You. There are a couple of other smaller ones that have appeared in previous sets before, but this one is entirely new. And it is an emblem that you get, similar to venturing into a dungeon, similar to becoming the monarch, or something along those lines. The difference is once you get this emblem, it can't be taken away from you. It can only progress further throughout the game. There are a couple of aspects of it. So the ring can tempt you, even if you don't control a creature. The ring gains its abilities from top to bottom, and once it gains an ability, it has that ability for the rest of the game. And each time the ring tempts you, you must choose a creature to be your ring bearer if you control a creature. And then each player can have 1 emblem named the ring and only 1 ring bearer at a time. So every time it tempts you, you can change your ring bearer. You can keep the same ring bearer, but you have to choose something as your ring bearer. Once you've chosen a ring bearer, that ring bearer gains abilities based on the number of times the ring has tempted you. So the first time the ring tempts you, you get the ring, which is the emblem that you get, and it progresses in abilities throughout depending on the number of times the ring has tempted you. So the first time the ring tempts you, you choose a ring bearer. Your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. The second time the ring tempts you, you retain that first ability, and then you gain the second ability. Whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. So it loots, basically. And then the third time the ring tempts you, you gain the additional ability in addition to the previous ones. Whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at end of combat. Again, useful ability for the ring bearer. And then the last ability, the final ability that you can get and unlock with the fourth time the ring tempts you, is whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So progressively more powerful, and again, each time the ring tempts you, you can choose a new ring bearer if you want, or keep the same ring bearer. And there are a number of cards that each time a ring bearer is chosen, something happens, etc. So good mechanic overall. I think it's very flavorful for this set.
Yep. We hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the rest of our set review. Up next, we have our artifact set review coming out tomorrow. And now I have to log off so we can go shoot our black set review. See you next time.